The message came during the morning shift change aboard the human flagship Aurora. Admiral Jack Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when Communications Officer Lisa Parker rushed into his quarters, her face pale with worry. "Sir, we have an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council. Priority Alpha level," she said, handing him the data pad with shaking hands. Morrison set down his coffee and read the message. His jaw tightened with each line. The Council of Elder Races, the group that ruled most of the galaxy, was making demands. Big demands. "Get me President Hayes on Earth immediately," Morrison ordered, "and call all senior staff to the bridge, now." The Aurora was humanity's most advanced warship, though it looked small compared to the massive Council vessels. It floated in space near the edge of human territory, keeping watch for threats. Morrison had commanded her for 5 years, but he had never received a message like this one. 20 minutes later, the bridge was full of worried faces. Morrison stood before the main screen, the Council's message displayed for all to see. The alien text had been translated into simple English, but the meaning was clear and threatening. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Council has given us an ultimatum," Morrison began. "They want 70% of everything we make on Earth and our colonies. They want our people to work as slaves in their factories. They want complete control over our government, our military, and our lives." Lieutenant Commander Ron Davis, the ship's tactical officer, cursed under his breath. "What do they give us in return, sir?" "They promise not to destroy every human world," Morrison replied coldly. "They call it protection. I call it extortion." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Council's power. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. When new species reached the stars, the Council either made them servants or wiped them out completely. No one had ever successfully fought back. Dr. Alex Carter, the ship's science officer, raised his hand. "Admiral, what's their deadline?" Morrison looked at the message again. 72 hours. They want our answer in 3 days or they start shooting." The communication panel beeped. President Hayes appeared on screen from his office on Earth. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him, other government leaders were gathering for an emergency meeting. "Jack, I assume you've seen the Council's message," Hayes said without greeting. "Yes, sir. The whole senior staff is here. What are your orders?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke carefully, knowing that Council spies might be listening. "Admiral, please implement Operation Revelation. Full authorization. Contact Dr. Clark and General Wright. Tell them it's time." Morrison felt his heart speed up. Operation Revelation was humanity's most secret plan. Only a few hundred people in the entire human race knew about it. For 50 years, ever since first contact with the Council, humanity had been preparing for this day. "Understood, Mr. President. What about the Council's deadline?" "We'll give them an answer, Jack, just not the one they expect." Hayes ended the transmission. Morrison turned to his crew. Most of them looked confused. They didn't know about Operation Revelation. Only Morrison, Carter, and a few others knew the truth about what humanity had been doing in secret. "Lisa, send a coded message to Neptune Base. Tell Admiral Thompson that Revelation is active. Ron, contact Captain Foster's strike group. Tell them to move to position Beta. Dr. Carter, get me a secure line to Dr. Clark on Mars." As his officers hurried to follow orders, Morrison walked to the observation window. He could see Earth in the distance, a blue marble floating in the darkness. 50 billion humans lived on that world and the colonies around it. The Council wanted to make them all slaves. The alien races in the Council thought humans were weak because they had seemed to cooperate for 50 years. They thought humans would surrender rather than fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Dr. Carter approached him. "Admiral, Dr. Clark is on the secure line." Morrison moved to his private office and activated the scrambled communication system. Dr. Ben Clark appeared on screen from his laboratory on Mars. Clark was the smartest human alive, and he had spent decades studying Council technology. "Ben, it's time. Are your projects ready?" Clark smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting for revenge. "Jack, we've been ready for 10 years. Our new weapons can cut through Council shields like they're made of paper. Their ships won't know what hit them. What about the quantum disruptors? Fully operational. Once we activate them, no Council ship will be able to jump to hyperspace. They'll be trapped in normal space where our weapons can reach them. Morrison felt a grim satisfaction. The Council thought they knew everything about human technology because they had been watching for 50 years. They didn't know about the secret research bases, the hidden shipyards, or the weapons that could destroy their mighty fleets. "How many ships do we have ready?" Morrison asked. "Admiral Thompson has 200 warships at Neptune base. Captain, Foster has 50 more in the outer system. All of them are equipped with our new technology. The Council has never faced weapons like these." After ending the call, Morrison returned to the bridge. His officers were busy with their tasks, but he could see the worry in their faces. They thought humanity was about to face extinction. "Sir," Lisa said, "we're getting reports from our agents throughout Council space. Their fleets are moving toward human territory. Intelligence estimates at least 5,000 ships. 5,000 ships against 250. The numbers looked impossible, but Morrison knew something the Council didn't. Human ships were no longer inferior copies of Council technology. They were something new, something better. "Any word from our people on the Council worlds?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Agent teams are in position on 47 different planets. They're ready to start operations when you give the word." Morrison nodded. For decades, humans had been sent to Council worlds as traders, diplomats, and workers. The Council thought they were keeping an eye on these humans. They didn't know that these people were actually intelligence agents, mapping defenses and building resistance networks. The Council had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that humans, like every other species they conquered, would either submit or be easily destroyed. They had no understanding of human history, no knowledge of how humans fought when their survival was threatened. Lieutenant Davis looked up from his tactical station. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting Council. Scout ships entering the outer system. They're probably looking for our fleet strength." "Let them look," Morrison said. "Make sure they see the Aurora and maybe a dozen other ships. Let them think we're weak and scared." The Council scouts would report back that humanity had only a small fleet of outdated ships. They would tell their commanders that the humans were no threat. This would make the Council overconfident, and overconfidence was something humans could use against them. Morrison looked around his bridge one more time. These people trusted him to keep humanity safe. They didn't know that the next few days would change everything in the galaxy. The Council had ruled through fear for thousands of years. They were about to learn what fear really meant. The communication panel beeped again. This time it was Admiral Kate Thompson from Neptune base. She was a tough woman who had been preparing for this war longer than anyone. "Jack, all ships are ready. Our crews have been training for this moment their entire careers. Just give us the word." Morrison took a deep breath. In less than 72 hours, humanity would give the Council their answer. It would not be the surrender the aliens expected. It would be a declaration of war that would shake the foundations of their empire. "Kate, prepare for immediate deployment. In 3 days, we show the galaxy what humans do when someone tries to make us slaves." The Tremors were about to begin. Neptune base was hidden in the shadow of the giant planet's largest moon. From the outside, it looked like a small mining station. The Council's spy satellites had watched it for years and saw nothing suspicious. They had no idea that beneath the fake mining equipment lay the largest military shipyard humanity had ever built. Admiral Kate Thompson stood in the command center, watching hundreds of technicians prepare for war. Through the massive windows, she could see the human fleet that the Council didn't know existed. 200 warships floated in the darkness, each one equipped with technology that would shock the alien races. "Admiral, all ships report ready for combat," said Commander Pete Johnson, her second in command. "Crews have completed final weapons tests. The new zero-point energy systems are running at full power." Thompson nodded. She had spent 15 years building this fleet in secret. Every ship had been constructed using materials that looked like normal trade goods to Council inspectors. Every weapon had been tested in remote areas of space where no alien sensors could detect them. "What's the status on Dr. Clark's quantum disruptors?" she asked. All units are installed and tested, ma'am. Once we activate them, no council ship. Within 50 light years, we'll be able to jump to hyperspace. They'll be stuck in normal space where our weapons can reach them. Thompson smiled grimly. The Council's greatest advantage had always been their ability to appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. Their hyperspace technology let them strike fast and disappear before enemies could fight back. But human scientists had found a way to trap them. On the other side of the solar system, Captain Lynn Foster was preparing her own surprise for the Council. Her 50 ships were hidden in an asteroid field near Pluto. They were smaller than Thompson's main fleet, but they carried the most advanced stealth technology humans had ever developed. Foster's ship, the Phantom, was completely invisible to Council sensors. She had spent 3 years flying through Council space, mapping their defenses and studying their tactics. What she had learned would give humanity a huge advantage in the coming war. "Captain, we're receiving the activation signal from Admiral Morrison," reported her communications officer. "Operation Revelation is now active." "Understood. Signal all ships to begin final preparations, and contact our agent teams on the Council worlds. Tell them to get ready." While the military prepared for war, Dr. Ben Clark was making final adjustments to humanity's secret weapons on Mars. His laboratory looked normal from the outside, but inside it contained technology that was 50 years ahead of anything the Council possessed. Clark had always been fascinated by physics and engineering. When he first saw Council technology after first contact, he was amazed by how advanced it seemed. But after years of study, he realized that the aliens had become lazy. They had stopped innovating thousands of years ago. "Doctor, the weapon systems are ready for deployment," said his assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim. "The new particle beams can penetrate Council shields with 98% efficiency." "Excellent. What about the defensive systems?" "Our new energy barriers are 3 times stronger than anything the Council has. Their weapons simply can't get through." Clark walked to the window and looked up at the red Martian sky. Somewhere, beyond those clouds, the Council's war fleets were moving toward Earth. They thought they were coming to crush a weak species. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The key breakthrough had come 5 years ago when Clark's team discovered that Council technology had a critical weakness. Their shields and weapons all used the same energy frequency. If you could disrupt that frequency, their entire technology base would fail. Human weapons were designed to exploit this weakness. Every shot would not only damage Council ships, but also interfere with their systems. The more humans fought, the weaker the Council would become. Back on Earth, General Susan Wright was coordinating with resistance cells that had been planted on dozens of Council worlds. For 30 years, humans had been sent to these worlds as workers, traders, and diplomats. The Council thought they were keeping these humans under control. They were wrong. "General, we have contact with Agent Team Alpha on Zerion Prime," reported Colonel Mike Davis from the Communications Center. "They confirmed that the main Council fleet is moving toward our space. Estimated arrival in 60 hours. What about the other teams?" "All 47 teams are in position and ready. They have explosives planted on key military installations, communication centers, and government buildings. When we give the signal, the Council's rear areas will explode into chaos." Wright had been a soldier for 25 years. She had studied every war in human history, learning from both victories and defeats. The Council made war by overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and technology, but humans would fight differently. The Council expected their enemies to meet them in open battle, ship against ship. Instead, humans would strike everywhere at once. While the main fleets fought in space, human agents would destroy Council bases. Throughout the galaxy, the aliens would find themselves fighting a war on 1,000 different fronts. "General, we're receiving a priority message from President Hayes," Davis said. "He wants to speak with you immediately." Wright moved to the secure communication room. President Hayes appeared on screen looking tired but determined. Behind him, she could see other government leaders working frantically to coordinate humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. "Susan, how are our preparations?" Hayes asked. "All teams are ready, Mr. President. Our agents are in position on Council worlds. The moment Admiral Morrison gives the signal, we can begin operations." "Good. I've been in contact with representatives from some of the species the Council has enslaved. Many of them are ready to rebel if they see that the Council can be defeated. Right. Understood the strategy. Humanity couldn't defeat the entire Council Empire alone, even with their technological advantages. But if the enslaved species joined the fight, the Council would face rebellions throughout their territory. What about the Council's deadline, sir? Hayes was quiet for a moment. We're going to give them an answer, Susan. Just not the one they expect. Meanwhile, Captain Ron Davis was leading a reconnaissance mission deep in Council space. His stealth ship, the Shadow, was completely invisible to alien sensors. For 2 days, he had been watching the largest Council fleet ever assembled. Sir, final count shows over 5,000 Council warships, reported his sensor operator. They're organized into 12 battle groups, each one larger than our entire fleet. Davis studied the tactical display. The Council ships were impressive, massive vessels that had conquered hundreds of worlds, but he could see weaknesses in their formation, gaps that human ships could exploit. What's their estimated time to reach Earth? At current speed, 58 hours, sir. Davis opened a secure channel to Admiral Morrison. Admiral, I'm transmitting. Complete tactical data on the Council fleet. They're moving in standard formation, maximum intimidation value but poor defensive positioning. Understood, Ron. Return to base immediately. We'll need every ship for what's coming. As Davis's ship turned toward home, he thought about the message humanity would soon send to the Council. For 50 years, the aliens had assumed that humans were just another weak species to be controlled and exploited. They were about to learn the truth about human nature. The Council ruled through fear, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to be afraid. They had never fought a species that got stronger when threatened. They had never encountered the human concept of fighting for freedom rather than survival. In less than 48 hours, Admiral Morrison would transmit humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. It would not be a surrender. It would be a declaration of war that would change the galaxy forever. The Council thought they were coming to collect tribute from another conquered species. Instead, they were about to face an enemy that had been preparing for this war for half a century. They were about to discover what happened when you threatened the freedom of beings who valued liberty more than life itself. The Tremors were building, and soon they would shake the foundations of the Council's empire. The Council chamber on Nexus Prime was the most important room in the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the 12 elder races had met here to decide the fate of countless worlds. The chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a circle around, a central platform where prisoners and petitioners stood to hear their judgment. Today, the Council had gathered to witness what they expected would be humanity's surrender. Representatives from all 12 elder races were present, their different forms creating a bizarre collection of scales, fur, and exotic alien features. At the center sat Prime Executor Zethkar, a massive reptilian creature who had ruled the Council for over 2 centuries. "The human deadline expires in 1 hour," announced Secondary Executor Vexitai, her insect-like mandibles clicking with anticipation. "Their response should arrive momentarily." Zethkar leaned back in his throne, satisfied. He had personally overseen the conquest of 47 different species during his reign. Humans would be number 48. The pattern was always the same. First came the ultimatum, then fear, then desperate negotiations, and finally complete surrender. "Have our fleets reached the human border?" he asked. "Yes, Prime Executor. Fleet Commander Thaxmore reports that all 5,000 ships are in position. The humans have only a few dozen vessels to oppose us. Victory will take less than a day." The other Council members made sounds of approval. The Galactic representative, a creature that looked like a giant spider, rubbed its front legs together in anticipation. "The human worlds will provide excellent slave labor. Their manufacturing capabilities will triple our industrial output. And their military technology, while primitive, may have some interesting applications," added the Zelon representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell. Zethkar nodded. The Council had been studying human technology for 50 years. While humans had made some advances, they were still thousands of years behind the elder races. Their weapons were weak, Their ships were small, and their defensive systems were laughable. A chime echoed through the chamber. The communication system was receiving an incoming transmission from human space. Zethkar activated the main viewer, expecting to see terrified human leaders begging for mercy. Instead, Admiral Jack Morrison appeared on the screen. He stood calmly in what was clearly a military command center. Behind him, tactical displays showed star maps and fleet positions. Morrison looked directly at the camera with steady, fearless eyes. "Council of Elder Races," Morrison began, his voice clear and strong. "We have received your ultimatum. After careful consideration, humanity's response is simple." The council members leaned forward in their seats. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Another species was about to join the ranks of the conquered. Morrison paused for just a moment, then spoke a single word that would change galactic history. "No." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Several council members made sounds of confusion. Had they heard correctly? Was this primitive species actually refusing their demands? But Morrison wasn't finished. "Furthermore, we hereby serve notice that humanity rejects council authority over our species completely. We demand the immediate release of all enslaved species, the dismantling of your tribute system, and the establishment of a true democratic galactic government." The council chamber erupted in chaos. The Gallic representative reared up on its hind legs, hissing in rage. The Morthan delegate, a creature that looked like a living rock, began growling deep in its throat. The Nexari representative, with its multiple heads, started arguing with itself in several different languages. Zethkar slammed his massive fist on his throne, creating a sound like thunder. "Silence!" he roared. The chamber fell quiet, but the anger in the air was thick enough to cut. Morrison continued speaking as if nothing had happened. "The Council has 72 hours to begin dismantling its empire of slavery. Release all conquered species, withdraw your occupation forces, and prepare for negotiations on the formation of a democratic galactic assembly." "Impossible," shrieked Fexthai. "No species makes demands of the Council. You exist only because we allow it." Morrison's expression didn't change. "And if the Council refuses our terms, then we will enforce them. You have 24 hours to begin compliance or face the consequences of your decision." Zethkar stood up to his full height, nearly 3 meters tall. His scaled skin turned darker with rage, and his eyes glowed with fury. "You dare threaten us? We who have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire? We who command fleets that could turn your worlds to ash?" "Yes," Morrison replied simply. "We dare." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For several long moments, no one spoke. The idea that any species would not only refuse council demands but make counter-demands was so shocking that it took time to process. Finally, Zethkar found his voice. "This is clearly some form of madness. No rational species would challenge council authority with such inferior forces." "Perhaps they don't understand our true power," suggested the Corvin representative, a slug-like creature with multiple eye stalks. "They may think their recent technological advances make them our equals." "Impossible," declared the Thrain delegate, a being that resembled a giant praying mantis. "Our intelligence reports show they have fewer than 100 warships. Our advanced scouts confirmed this just hours ago." Zethkar activated the communication system and contacted Fleet Commander Thaxmore, who was leading the Council's invasion force. The commander's image appeared on screen, showing a humanoid alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "Commander, did you monitor the human transmission?" "Yes, Prime Executor, the humans appear to have lost their minds. They actually think they can fight us." "What is your current tactical situation?" "All 5,000 ships are in position at the edge of human space. Our scouts report minimal human fleet activity. They have perhaps 50 ships near their homeworld, all of primitive design. We can begin the attack at your command." Zethkar looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. All of them were angry, but underneath the anger was something else. Something that hadn't been felt in the council chamber for thousands of years. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. Uncertainty, Prime Executor, said the Avalon representative, a being that looked like a living tree. Perhaps we should investigate further before beginning the attack. The human's confidence seems unusual. They're bluffing, Zethkar declared, though his voice carried less certainty than his words. No species has ever successfully resisted council authority. These humans will learn the same lesson as all the others. But even as he spoke, Zethkar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. The humans had looked directly at the council's greatest military force and shown no fear. They had made demands instead of pleas. They had spoken as equals rather than subjects. Commander Thaxmore, Zethkar ordered, begin the attack, destroy their military forces and prepare for planetary bombardment. Make their defeat so complete that no other species will ever think of following their example. Understood, Prime Executor. Beginning attack run now. As the transmission ended, the council members settled back to watch the destruction of humanity. They expected the war to last a few hours at most. They expected to see human ships destroyed easily by superior council weapons. They expected another easy victory to add to their long list of conquests. What they didn't expect was what happened next. The first reports came 30 minutes later. Commander Thaxmore's voice was tight with shock and confusion. Prime Executor, we're encountering unexpected resistance. Human weapons are different than anticipated. Explain, Zethkar demanded. Their weapons are penetrating our shields. Our defensive systems seem to be malfunctioning. We've already lost over 100 ships. The council chamber fell silent again. Lost ships? The humans were actually destroying council vessels? This was impossible. More reports followed, each one more disturbing than the last. Human ships were appearing from nowhere, striking with devastating precision, then disappearing before council forces could respond. Council weapons, which had never failed before, were having no effect on human defenses. But the most shocking report came an hour later. Commander Thaxmore's image appeared on screen, and behind him alarms were blaring. His ship was clearly damaged. Prime Executor, we're trapped. Our hyperspace engines won't function. The humans have deployed some kind of disruption field. We can't retreat. Zethkar felt something he hadn't experienced in over 200 years of rule. For the first time since becoming Prime Executor, he felt afraid. The tremors that Morrison had promised were beginning to shake the very foundations of the Council's power. Captain Lynn Foster watched the Council fleet through her ship's sensors with cold satisfaction. The massive alien armada was exactly where human intelligence had predicted it would be. 5,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, moving toward Earth like an unstoppable wave of destruction. The Council commanders had no idea they were flying into the most carefully planned trap in galactic history. All ships, this is Foster, she transmitted to her strike force. Begin attack pattern Alpha. Remember, hit fast and hit hard. We need to break their formation before they know what's happening. Foster's 50 ships had been hiding in the asteroid field for 3 days, completely invisible to Council sensors. The aliens had flown right past them, focused only on the small human fleet they could see near Earth. They had no idea that humanity's real strength was behind them. Target their command ships first, Foster ordered. Without leadership, their formation will fall apart. The human ships emerged from the asteroids like deadly ghosts. Their new stealth technology made them invisible until they were almost close enough to touch the Council vessels. The first the aliens knew of the attack was when their shields started failing under the impact of human weapons. Commander Pete Johnson, leading Foster's 2nd Squadron, watched in amazement as his weapons tore through a Council dreadnought's defenses. The massive alien ship, 3 times larger than any human vessel, exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the darkness of space. My God, Johnson whispered. It actually works. Their shields can't stop our weapons at all. The Council formation began to break apart as panic spread through their ranks. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds found themselves helpless against weapons they had never seen before. Their own weapons, designed to fight enemies with similar technology, couldn't penetrate the new human energy barriers. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Fleet Commander Thaxmore stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Half of his command ships were gone, destroyed in the first 5 minutes of battle. The humans had come from nowhere, striking with precision that seemed impossible. "How many human ships are attacking us?" he demanded. "Sensors show approximately 50 vessels, Commander," his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking with fear. "But they're destroying our ships faster than we can target them. 50 ships against 5,000, and we're losing?" Thaxmore couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What kind of weapons are they using?" "Unknown, sir. Their energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Our shields are collapsing on contact." Before Thaxmore could respond, another wave of human ships appeared on his sensors. This time it was Admiral Kate Thompson's main fleet, emerging from hyperspace directly behind the Council forces. 200 fresh human warships, all equipped with the same devastating weapons that were tearing his fleet apart. "We're surrounded," his navigation officer reported. "Human forces have us trapped between two battle groups." Thaxmore tried to order a retreat, but his communications officer shook his head. "Sir, hyperspace engines are offline. Some kind of interference is preventing faster-than-light travel." Dr. Ben Clark's quantum disruptors were working perfectly. The energy field they created made it impossible for any ship to enter hyperspace. The Council's greatest advantage, their ability to appear and disappear at will, had been taken away. Admiral Thompson positioned her fleet carefully, creating a killing field that the Council ships couldn't escape. Her weapons officers had trained for years for this moment, and they didn't waste a single shot. Every blast found its target, every target was destroyed. "Admiral, the Council fleet is trying to reform their battle line," reported her tactical officer. "They're attempting to concentrate their firepower." "Let them try," Thompson replied calmly. "Our shields can handle anything they throw at us. Keep hitting their command ships. Once their leadership is gone, the rest will surrender or run." The battle was turning into a massacre. Council ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were exploding like toys. Their weapons, which had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years, couldn't even scratch human defenses. But the real shock came when the Council tried to call for reinforcements. Throughout their empire, garrison fleets received orders to move toward human space immediately. What they found instead was chaos. On the Council world of Xerion Prime, Agent Team Alpha had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. When the signal came from Earth, they moved with deadly precision. The main military command center exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from orbit. Communication towers throughout the planet went dark. The orbital defense platforms simply stopped working. Similar scenes played out on 47 different worlds. Human agents who had been living normal lives as traders and workers suddenly revealed themselves as elite soldiers. They struck at the heart of Council power, destroying the infrastructure that held their empire together. General Susan Wright watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Every human agent team was reporting success. Council worlds were falling into chaos as their command systems collapsed. "General, we're receiving surrender requests from 6 different planetary governors," Colonel Mike Davis reported. "They're asking for terms. Tell them to release all slave populations and disarm their military forces," Wright ordered. "Any world that cooperates will be treated fairly. Any world that resists will be liberated by force." The enslaved species throughout the galaxy were watching the battle with growing amazement. For thousands of years they had lived under Council rule, believing that resistance was impossible. Now they were seeing the impossible happen before their eyes. On the mining world of Kalos 7, the reptilian sectar workers had been slaves for 800 years. When news of the human victory reached them, something remarkable happened. They stopped working. They looked at their Council overseers, beings they had feared for centuries, and saw them for what they really were, just another species, no better or stronger than anyone else. The revolution began on Kalos 7, but it spread like wildfire throughout Council space. Species that had been enslaved for millennia suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. They picked up mining tools and farming equipment and turned them into weapons. They overwhelmed their guards and seized control of their worlds. Back in the battle zone, Fleet Commander Thaxmore was facing the complete destruction of his fleet. 3,000 Council ships had been destroyed in just 4 hours of fighting. The survivors were scattered and demoralized, their crews begging for permission to surrender. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship," his communications officer reported. Admiral Morrison appeared on the main screen, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives from a dozen different species, all of them former council slaves who had joined the human cause. "Commander Thaxmore," Morrison said, "your fleet is defeated. Your empire is collapsing. I'm offering you one chance to surrender with honor. Order your remaining ships to stand down and prepare to be boarded." Thaxmore looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. He could see the defeat in their eyes, the knowledge that everything they had believed about council superiority was a lie. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. "Unconditional surrender. Your crews will be treated as prisoners of war under galactic law. Your ships will be impounded pending the establishment of a new galactic government." Thaxmore closed his eyes. His career was over. The Council's reign of terror was ending. But perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing. He had seen too many worlds enslaved, too many species destroyed for the Council's glory. "I accept your terms," he said finally. "All Council ships, this is Fleet Commander Thaxmore. Cease fire and prepare for surrender." The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Throughout the galaxy, the news was spreading. The Council could be defeated. The Empire of Fear was crumbling. The tremors that had started with humanity's refusal to submit were becoming earthquakes that would reshape the entire galaxy. 6 months after the Great Battle, Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Aurora as it entered orbit around Nexus Prime. The once mighty capital of the Council Empire now looked very different. Where massive war fleets had once patrolled the space around the planet, only a few human ships maintained a peaceful watch. The war that the Council expected to last a few hours had stretched into months, but not because humanity was losing. The opposite was true. Everywhere human forces went, they found enslaved species ready to fight for their freedom. The Council's empire had collapsed, not from external attack, but from internal revolution. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," reported Communications Officer Lisa Parker. "The Council is ready to meet with you." Morrison nodded. This meeting had been planned for weeks. The surviving Council members, those who hadn't fled or been overthrown by their own people, had finally agreed to negotiate, not from a position of strength but as defeated leaders facing the end of their empire. "Signal the surface. Tell them I'll be down in 1 hour." The shuttle ride to the planet's surface gave Morrison time to think about how much had changed. When the war began, the Council controlled thousands of worlds and billions of sentient beings. Now their empire existed only on a dozen planets, and even those were in rebellion. The shuttle landed at the Council's Great Palace, a massive structure that had once been the symbol of absolute power in the galaxy. Now it looked empty and abandoned. Most of the Council's servants had fled when the revolution began. The few guards remaining looked nervous and defeated. Morrison was escorted through halls that had once hosted the rulers of the galaxy. The walls were covered with artwork stolen from conquered worlds, trophies of thousands of years of oppression. Soon, all of it would be returned to its rightful owners. The Council chamber was almost empty. Only 6 of the 12 elder races remained. The others had either been overthrown by revolutions on their homeworlds or had fled to unknown parts of the galaxy. Those who remained looked old and tired, their arrogance replaced by fear and desperation. Prime Executor Zethkar sat on his throne, but the massive reptilian being looked smaller somehow. His scales had lost their shine, and his eyes no longer glowed with the confidence of absolute power. He looked up as Morrison entered, and for a moment, the two leaders stared at each other in silence. "Admiral Morrison," Zethkar said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "we are prepared to discuss terms." Morrison remained standing. He would not sit in the presence of beings who had enslaved half the galaxy. "There are no terms to discuss. You will surrender unconditionally and submit to justice for your crimes against sentient life." The remaining council members shifted nervously in their seats. Secondary Executor Vextai, the insect-like being who had once clicked her mandibles, In anticipation of human surrender, now made small frightened sounds. "Admiral, surely some accommodation can be reached," she said. "The Council has ruled for thousands of years. There must be some way to preserve the order we have maintained." "The order you maintained was built on slavery and fear," Morrison replied coldly. "That order is dead. What replaces it will be decided by the free peoples of the galaxy, not by you." Through the great windows of the chamber, Morrison could see the city beyond. Where once Council soldiers had patrolled the streets, now representatives from dozens of different species worked together to build something new. The Galactic Democratic Assembly was already taking shape, with delegates arriving daily from liberated worlds. Dr. Alex Carter had been working with scientists from across the galaxy to share human technology freely. The energy weapons and defensive systems that had defeated the Council were being adapted for peaceful purposes. Worlds that had been strip-mined by Council industries were being restored. Species that had been separated for generations were being reunited. "What will happen to us?" asked the Corvin representative, the slug-like creature that had once anticipated the profits from human slave labor. "You will stand trial," Morrison said simply. "The new galactic government will decide your fate based on your crimes. You may find mercy, others will not." The door to the chamber opened and Captain Lynn Foster entered with a small escort. She carried a datapad containing the formal surrender documents that would officially end the Council's rule. "Admiral, the documents are ready for signature," Foster reported. "The last Council garrison on Vega Prime surrendered 2 hours ago. All Council military forces have now laid down their arms." Morrison turned back to the defeated Council members. "You have one final choice. Sign these documents and accept the jurisdiction of the new galactic government, or refuse and be treated as war criminals with no legal protection." Zethkar looked at the datapad as if it were a poisonous snake. His clawed hand shook as he reached for the electronic stylus. For over 200 years he had ruled with absolute authority. Now he was signing away not just his power, but the power of his entire species. "How did you know?" he asked quietly as he signed. "How did you know we would be vulnerable to your weapons?" Morrison studied the former Prime Executor. "Because we studied you. For 50 years we watched and learned. We saw that you had stopped growing, stopped innovating. You became comfortable with your power and forgot that someone else might find a way to take it from you. But your technology, your weapons, how did you advance so far beyond us so quickly?" "Because we had to," Morrison replied. "You ruled through fear, but fear can also motivate the oppressed. Every species you enslaved, every world you conquered, every life you destroyed gave us more reason to find a way to stop you." One by one, the remaining Council members signed the surrender documents. With each signature, thousands of years of galactic tyranny came to an end. The last empire of slavery was officially dissolved. As the ceremony concluded, Morrison received a message from Earth. President Hayes appeared on his communication device, smiling for the first time in months. "Jack, I just wanted to congratulate you on behalf of all humanity. The galaxy is finally free. Thank you, Mr. President. But this isn't humanity's victory alone. Every species that fought for their freedom deserves credit for what happened here. Speaking of which, the Assembly has made a decision about your future. They want you to serve as the first elected president of the new galactic government." Morrison was surprised. He had expected to return to Earth once the war was over, to go back to being a simple ship captain. The idea of leading the entire galaxy had never occurred to him. "Sir, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for that job. Jack, you're the one who stood up to the Council when everyone else was afraid. You're the one who united dozens of species in the fight for freedom. The galaxy trusts you." Morrison looked around the Council chamber one more time. The symbols of tyranny were already being removed, replaced by the emblems of the new democratic government. Representatives from hundreds of worlds were working together to build a better future. Outside, former slaves were walking free for the first time in generations. Children who had been born in captivity were learning what it meant to make their own choices. Scientists and artists from different species were sharing their knowledge and culture without fear. All right, Mr. President, Morrison said finally. I'll do it. But only until proper elections can be held. The transformation of the galaxy would take years to complete. There would be challenges, setbacks, and difficult decisions ahead. But for the first time in thousands of years, every sentient being in the galaxy had hope for a better future. The Council had tried to extort humanity, expecting easy submission or quick conquest. Instead, their ultimatum had awakened something that would change everything. The tremors that began with humanity's simple refusal to surrender had become the earthquake that brought down an empire and gave birth to a new age of freedom among the stars. The old galaxy was dead. The new galaxy belonged to the free.